just a quick reminder that next week is Truth and Reconciliation Day, National Truth and Reconciliation Day. So it's quite appropriate, I guess, that we're talking about split tooth, considering that. So it's a national. Well, technically not even it's a federal holiday, but not a provincial holiday. But the University of Montreal decided to recognize it, so we have a day off. Yeah.
I'm not unhappy about it.
No, I think it's a really good thing that they do that, and I think it's a legitimate shame that the provincial government doesn't recognize it. But that's
another point for it.
I mean, yeah. It's weird that if I don't teach at college on Tuesdays generally, but that I would be working then, but not here. Anyway, outside of just a question of work, it's an odd flex to have by the government. To not recognize it. Apparently we have too many days off already, so yeah. Yeah, I think that was the justification they gave when they decided not to do it. It had nothing to do with morality or like historical injustices.
It sounds like a week.
Yeah, it's the worst argument that you could imagine. Like,
also, how can we have too
many days off?
Yeah, it's like, don't you want more?
When historically we're at the lowest numbers of days off that as a human species we've ever had.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. So yeah, just don't remember. You can come to school if you want, but I'm not going to be here, so do whatever you want.
No, actually, one of my classes on Monday was also cancelled, and I have 2 today. Mm-hmm. So, like, 3 of my classes was cancelled next week. So, basically, it's a free week.
Was it canceled because of Truth and Reconciliation Day, or because the teacher just couldn't? Okay.
It's the same teacher, actually, that teaches my class this afternoon and tomorrow morning. So, maybe.
Jessie,
I thought maybe she was like, I can have like a really huge week.
It might be because, knowing Jessie at least, or at least some of her schedule and stuff that she does, it's probably something like a conference that she's at or something like that. Yeah.
But it could have been also just her being like,
yeah, we're taking the entire week off.
Just cancel both classes. And I was like, I'm not mad about it.
I'm never mad about a day off.
I always feel bad. Like, I remember as a student wanting, like, very much being okay with days off.
Yeah.
But as a teacher, I always find it sucky to give, like, to send messages to students being like, I can't because you've paid for this class and stuff like that. And, like, I feel bad always to remove that opportunity from you all, but I don't know. Now that I hear you speak about your lack of care,
please don't feel bad.
It's more like a tiny surprise. You're like, ooh,
yeah. Well, I'm always like overbooked.
Yeah,
like the amount of readings and stuff. So I'm like,
might as well just read the things we have to.
Did we actually have a chance to finish Split?
Not finished, but
read
on the way.
Read a lot of it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's special. Yeah.
It is.
I started rereading it and I was like, I need to send a message about this because the last time I had read it cover to cover, I knew I wanted to talk about it in this class, but the last time I had read it cover to cover was what actually when I was roughly your age, I had read it for a graduate class on Indigenous literatures.
Mm-hmm.
I had forgotten I remembered that there was a sexual nature to it.
Yeah.
I had forgotten that it was so explicit, right? And I don't think that should remove from our ability to discuss it, right? I think we're all mature adults enough to be able to get some.
At least.
Yeah, exactly. So
I was just confused about a few things.
Yeah, no.
Very confusing.
I wasn't sure if some things were metaphorical or if she wanted us to read it as this happened, as it were.
Yeah.
Like this. And I was like, but did it though? So I was really getting confused at some point, especially with some of the animals.
Yes.
It's not only me in this case, because
the first time I read it, it was also confusing. Mm-hmm. And I would say that you'll hear me say this very frequently if ever you take other classes with me. It's my fetish is perhaps a wrong word here. It's my appropriate phrase, or my frequent phrase. I would say that it's a feature of the text and not a bug, right? Okay. We'll use a computer metaphor here. It's a feature, not a bug. Because the first time I read it, I also had quite a bit of difficulty following what was happening, right? And kind of like you, like, is this reality? Reality, right? As we understand it?
Or is it actually happening to the
And
character?
I think that's a really good question to unpack. Yes.
I read it yesterday in front of my roommates, and she was just like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. I actually, that is something I've started doing, just because sometimes I like to do it, is reading audiobooks, or listening to audiobooks, I should say. I actually did listen to a sample of it as an audiobook, and you're absolutely right. It is scorching in here this morning. So, yeah, and it actually is quite interesting to read out loud, I find. I think there is a musicality to the way that she writes that's interesting to consider. Which makes sense considering she is a musician. Right? Did any of you look up some of her music? Yeah, it's fine. I will play some in a second. Yeah. So she, if you want to put like a broad category to it, she qualifies herself as a punk throat singer, right? And not punk in like the Killing Joke type punk from the like 70s and 80s. There's a reference for no one, I guess. Check out Killing Joke, I guess. It's good. But not that kind of Sex Pistols, break everything, discordant guitars type of punk. Right? Punk in the more, I guess, metaphorical sense of wanting to I guess speak to the man, right? Quote unquote, a kind of anti-authoritarian punk, right? Without actually having the trappings of what we would expect as punk, right? And I can imagine that anti-authoritarian, which you should read as anti-colonial, I guess, in Tagaq's case, is one of the reasons why I'm having us read this right after Heart of Darkness. Right. And I had you kind of think of these in parallel, both on the level of form, but also thematically speaking. Right? Which I think, by the way, extends to the sexual nature of the book. Right. We talked very briefly about the way that nature was described in Heart of Darkness. Yeah. And in an almost admiration, sexualized type of way. Right. Which was also demonstrated in the clip by Werner Herzog, that I showed you. And so I think she's deliberately, again, taking this sexual angle into an interesting, if hard to swallow sometimes, direction. Yeah. That's a lot of stuff. I'm writing down these things as we're covering them. This is one of those books that I know why I assigned it, right? Like in my mind, like I said, when I was building this class, I knew from the start that I wanted to assign it because I feel like there's so many things to unpack in it, right? Both on the level of the storytelling, form, content, context. But I don't know how to get from point A to point B quite yet, right? I'm going to kind of, this more than any other class is probably going to be very much a thinking through process, okay? Which I guess fits with the form of this text, yeah? And it is worth noting that in the context specifically of Planetarity, as we're thinking through it in this classroom, there is an increasing subfield, if you want to call it that, of planetary theory and thought that is actively engaging with sexuality, right? Our resident planetary thinker, I'm pointing that way. Yeah, I think her office is right there. Heike, who you've met, I think, is thinking through that actively, for example. And so I think while it's not my specific expertise where planetary is concerned, I think it is something that is worth unpacking in relation to this broader thought. Right? So yeah, how are we going to get there? What's it going to look like? I don't know. I really don't. But I think we're going to have fun along the way. So, um, Alicia, you mentioned, right, that you had difficulty kind of following whether it was real or not. Any other initial thoughts that came up while reading this, aside from just the confusion, which I would embrace? It's fine if no. I'm just curious, like, just to have some sense of.
I think in this book she
Yeah.
prioritized her connection with the nature,
Yeah.
especially when I don't know if you guys caught that point there where she's looking at the northern lights there.
Mhm.
She kind of amazed with that,
Yeah.
and there is something else, I felt strange because looking at this part, and when we could see the Northern Lights last year down
Yes.
here in Montreal,
Sure.
and I was like that. Okay, that's the way I should be feeling like that time,
Yeah.
just like her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the thing about that, and that was really strange because it's much more than looking at that. It's something like not only feeling, but there is something magical, something other than that we can feel. And
Yeah.
that's one of the point. If she is kind of a dreaming, she's this is reality.
Mhm.
She's in another planet or something like this.
Yeah. I like that use of the term magical.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think we can hang on to that one for a bit. Full disclosure, I think magic is 100% real, right? And not in like the wizard, like Merlin sense of like, ooh. Yeah, but in the sense that you're getting at, Marcio. Absolutely, right. This kind of sense of wonder that comes with what we kind of associate with magic. I fully embrace that, right? I think it's just a different terminology for a lot of the terms that we've kind of been thinking through, right? Especially the sublime or the unknown, right? And especially, by the way, in the context of literature, it is something to keep in mind since language and words, both written and spoken, have often been associated with the use of magic, right? Where do we think we get the word for grammar, right? It has the same root as grimoire, by the way. Right? Yeah, you laugh, but it's true. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure it's true. It's just like, oh, that's a funny coincidence or not. But
it's not a coincidence. That's what I'm saying. It's not a coincidence.
But it's funny.
When you think of it, right? Just the act of speaking, right, a word makes something become reality. Yeah, you're quite literally doing a kind of philosophical or intangible type of alchemy. Yeah, and I know, like, I'm sounding a bit crazy right now saying that, but like I'm speaking obviously on like a metaphorical level.
No, but
yeah.
there was a book like that who used the power of words. It was the more this kind of phrase is used by the world, the more power it holds.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was super interesting, this book.
No, 100%. Yeah. You can think of it on like a joke level on how we have words that when we say them, people immediately understand and forgive a lot of stuff, right? The one I have in mind at all times is laundry day, right? You can wear the trashiest clothes on earth, right? Just the worst mismatched clothes that make no sense to wear in public. And if someone questions you about it, you just say laundry day, and immediately reality becomes whatever you make it, right? Obviously, I'm making like a bit of a tongue-in-cheek reference here, to something kind of absurd, but that's what I mean. Yeah. Sorry, Leonie, you look like you were going to say something before I went on a weird magical tangent.
No. I thought it was just like the narrator's ability to feel and embrace nature in a way that we, the reader, cannot. Like, there's this connection that we don't feel or that we don't have.
Good.
That I thought was interesting, and I was wondering at some point how it plays out with all the trauma she's been through, or like, because a lot of the sexual encounters she has with nature felt to me like it helped her heal certain things. And there's a shift in the novel where it's like you feel like she has taken her power back. Through those experiences, or with the help of with this connection to nature.
Yeah.
I don't know if that, yeah.
No, absolutely. You can obviously create an extension of what you just said with, by looking at what encounters she has or what sexual relations she has that are consensual. Right. The first one she has in the novel is what? Who does she have in her first consensual?
No,
Oh, consensual.
Okay.
Is it with her like girlfriend?
Yeah, with
Yeah,
the
she
person.
felt,
Yeah,
she felt attracted by it.
She felt attracted.
Yeah.
The first consensual one was with the fox, like full on
yes,
relations
right.
with the fox. Yeah, but you're right. She did feel attraction to her friend, right? But it wasn't like a full on like relation, so to speak, like sexual act. Sorry, that was my like question that was not framed properly, but yeah, absolutely. So I think you're 100% right, Annie, that it can tie in to historical trauma in some sense. Yeah. And I guess, yeah. Do we want to start? I think we should start with the music, actually. Yeah, before we get into all of these like really good questions. And there's no video for this one. I just want you to, it's 2 minutes. I just want you to like sit back and listen to Tagaq here. So don't worry if you don't understand the lyrics. There are technically none. It's all throat singing. Well, which I guess are lyrics. Yeah.
Wow.
Good reaction there.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had that reaction. When I first heard her voice, I was not expecting it to come out of Tanya. At least based off the picture that I had seen of her, I was like, "Oh, damn!" That it is quite shocking, right? To just hear that voice, even if you don't associate it with the image that we would make of Tagaq just from the back of the cover. But there's something about that voice that is, I guess, kind of punk, right? It's kind of raw and unfiltered, if that makes sense, right? It doesn't appear that way, at least not listening to it.
I saw a YouTube video
Yeah,
about her, and she's speaking.
nice.
She's so full of calmness,
Yeah,
and she feel it. When I saw her, I thought she was under influence of something.
oh, because it was like so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so yeah, I'm doing fine, everything, anything like that. And oh my god,
yeah.
she's like this all the time.
I haven't listened to everything she's ever said, but from what I've seen, yeah. Which, by the way, is a really interesting to consider. Yeah. In like a broader relation to the Arctic setting that this takes place in, or just our understanding of the Arctic as a setting and place. Because you're right, the cold is disconcerting, right? Both on a vocal level, right, or just on an emotional level. When people are cold towards us, we notice it, and we often express, right, "Hey, why are you being so cold?" Right? But that applies, by the way, on a literary level as well, right? There are some critics, or literary critics, I should say, who use the term hot and cold when referring to poetry, for example. And when they refer to cold lineation, for example, or cold rhyme, it's the most consistent and often disconcerting type of poetry, right? It hits you with this rhythm that is unbreakable and extremely difficult um, to look away from, because it is so consistently off-putting.
Just like the
Right.
song.
Good.
Because I don't know about you guys, but it's something like feeling threatened,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a hunting.
Yeah.
Someone's behind you,
Good.
quite close, and you gotta be really, really aware what is going on. Did you feel like that?
Yeah.
Or I'm getting crazy or saying some bullshit here?
No.
It's Halloween.
It's Halloween.
Yeah, that's the spirit. That's
I'm
right.
feeling haunted.
You should play that at the like outside your home. You just scare children away. Yeah.
Yeah, but it does have that quality to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels a
Very
little
gloomy.
scary.
And,
Yeah. What is it? The voice? Is it the instruments? What do you think gave it that quality of gloominess?
I believe the instrument, the rhythm,
Yeah, the drums that are. Yeah.
like that.
Uh-huh.
Just like in a jungle, and actually more appropriate to say the Arctic.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Although the jungle is a useful way of thinking about it as well, right?
Yeah.
What was terrifying about the jungle in Heart of Darkness, right? It's kind of inhumanity and like disconcerting threateningness.
Yeah.
Or threateningness, threat. Yeah, absolutely. But why? I guess we could frame the question this way: why is this considered punk and anti-colonial, whereas the similar effect that we felt from Heart of Darkness considered generally colonial and threatening in a different way, right? If at all, right? Marcio, you seem to be almost disagreeing, and that's fine. You can absolutely disagree.
Actually, I'm surprised by that question.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find a.
It's not an easy
rearrange
question.
my words here,
Yeah. Take your time. Yeah.
I'd say that it's in its like form, it does not conform to the standards that we usually have for a novel or for fiction. It just like I was reading it and I was trying to like put it in a category, and I was unable to do that.
Yeah.
It's just, and I think it was at times a bit uncomfortable for the reader to.
Okay. Yeah. The text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To not be able to categorize it in my like mental understanding of the world. Like it's bigger than the categories that I figured out for myself.
Good. Anything else?
I think it's about the relation with nature, because she's accepting basically everything from it. She's very open to it in a way that most people aren't. And, completely different to Heart of Darkness, who's not only amazed by it, but it's threatened by it and is scared of it. She feels scared, yes, but like not in a threatened kind of way. It's more like in a oh wow kind of way. She's like, this is amazing. Yeah. This is real.
This is real, yeah.
And in Heart of Darkness, you see that they kind of want to take a position of the domineering position to it, and she doesn't want that. She is submissive to it.
Yeah, good.
It's completely the opposite to me.
Good.
I would say that in Heart of Darkness, the victims there, the African people, they don't have a voice.
Yes.
However, in this book there, the victim actually has a voice, a loud voice, that's the same comparison. So you have the predator, I would say, in the Heart of Darkness.
Yeah.
And in the Split Tooth there, you have let's just say the victim actually having something different from the Heart of Darkness. The way of express her pain of the trauma, as Leone said here, and that's completely different, I guess.
Yeah, good. I think these are all really, really awesome points, especially on the level of form that you all kind of touched upon on some level, right? We're going to keep coming back to form. I think that's the most. No, but I think that's the most radical part of Tagaq's work, even if it's the most perhaps understated, because everyone focuses on like the head trip of the Northern Lights, right, or the sexuality and so, or the violence. Rightfully so, it's impactful, and there's a lot to unpack there, right? But the way that the actual story is told, I think you're all absolutely correct, is a decolonial act in and of itself. And even though we did talk about Heart of Darkness as also playing with form, right, on some level, we keep going back and forth in past, present, future, and for its time, it was certainly radical in that sense, right? Absolutely. I'm not here to kind of like completely remove any kind of potential for a Heart of Darkness, right? But I think at the end of the day, right, it uses, I think, Alicia, you were right, it uses that form in order to try to reflect a desire to contain, right, once again. Okay. Whereas Tagaq's book uses form as a way to reflect the uncontainable element of nature, right, or her world, right, beyond nature. Because it's not just nature, of course, that she engages with. Although it's it's the easiest way that we can think of it in this sense. Absolutely, that's really awesome. Okay. One thing that you brought up, Marcio, that was really interesting, and that gets us back to what we were talking about with Leonie earlier, right, is speech, right? Who gets to speak in this book? Okay, and I think that's a really good place to start because mostly it happens right at the start of the book, so might as well start there. You mentioned something very interesting, whereas in Heart of Darkness, the Africans who are there, the Congolese people, do not speak. Right? They are there, and we know they're there, but either they are made invisible by the jungle, or they are explicitly said and described as not speaking, right? Which is problematic in its own right. Okay. Here, of course, you obviously get not only the idea that an Indigenous person wrote this, right, which is a form of agency and voice on one level. But in the text as well, right? Who gets to speak in the text? Who are the characters that actually speak in the text?
It's a girl that is not named.
So the narrator, who actually, interestingly, has no name. We can maybe come back to that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So good. The narrator. She clearly speaks since she's narrating. Yeah.
I think Helen.
Helen? Yeah. Good.
Who also has a name.
Yeah, well, she has a name. Yeah. One of the few people who has a name.
Like a name, not like Yellow Pants.
Right, exactly. Not a nickname. Yeah. Uh-huh. Does the fox speak?
I don't know if they speak, but they are so numberless.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because there is some passage there saying there are foxes on the dump.
Yeah.
Things like that. And it seems like they are part of their lives.
Yeah.
Just like close friends.
Yeah.
Or just like the small creatures. Lemmings?
Yeah, lemmings.
Lemmings, yeah.
Did you look up what a lemming actually is?
Yeah. This is the first time
they're so cute.
Yeah.
They're adorable, and I wish I had one. It's
one of them. Have a bat?
I have a cat, but unfortunately,
it's different.
He bites me more than a lemming would. Yeah, they're great. They're like Arctic guinea pigs. Yeah, okay. We do get a bit at the start where her uncle speaks, right? I just wanted to tell you kids not to be scared. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that part is, and in the you still have the picture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we still have the image, right? So at the very beginning, we can talk about the images. I think that's part of the weird form that she's going for here.
Yeah. It works.
It works. It absolutely works. Does the teacher ever speak?
I want to say no.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I don't think he ever does.
Blubbery. I remember the time where he was drunk, but I don't think he speaks. He's just like.
Yeah, he kind of like mumbles at some point. Yeah, when he's
He's not there.
It's never quite coherent, right? Even if he like, you're right. The drunkenness is kind of incoherent at some point, but actual speech and dialogue that we get from him, or any kind of verbal confirmation that he does speak or even teach anything.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I didn't remember any part of this book where he does, right? I could be wrong, and maybe there's like one sentence in here somewhere, but I can't remember it.
Not that I remember.
Why is that important?
Yeah. Well, it's all in his nonverbal to me. It's everything that he does and doesn't say.
Good. Yeah.
If the teacher doesn't speak and doesn't express himself clear, how could ever she learn something?
Okay, so on the one hand, it does definitely frame what she learns.
Yeah.
What does she learn from him?
It seems nothing. Or just something that she shouldn't be learning from him. Because technically, when we go to school, we are supposed to learn something valuable, something that will make difference in our lives. And she goes to school, and she got disgusted.
Good. Yeah. I think disgusted. She got, assaulted.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That's what she learned, is not to trust the teacher.
Right? Not trust the authority figure. Yeah.
Good. That's a better way of framing that. Yeah. Because you're right? The rest of the book, any kind of authority figure is kind of distrusted, right? So yeah, absolutely. Right. Because the only experience that she has of him, or that she mentions in the book, is one of sexual violence, right? Which, again, ties into what Heart of Darkness represents, but is less explicitly mentioned in Heart of Darkness specifically, right? A history of colonial violence that is enacted, of course, not just on the level of straight up genocide, right, or ecocide, or land conquest, right, but sexual violence as well, right? That is an inevitable part of imperial conquest, right? But inevitable. Obviously, people had the choice to do this or not, right? So it's not inevitable in that sense, but it's a recurring part, I should say, of imperial conquest. And one that is very much still reflected today, right? Who is this book dedicated to? Did anyone notice? For the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and survivors of residential schools. Right.
Sorry, is it here that we talked about the many girls that disappeared in like Vancouver area?
No, but please share.
I think it might be in my other class.
It might be in your Chem Lit class. I wouldn't be surprised that you talked about it with Jessie. Absolutely.
There was readings about it, and it was a girl. I think it was an Indigenous girl that was accused of killing all of these disappeared people. But turns out it was just, it's because they were basically drug addicts or homeless or Indigenous women that were disappearing or attacked or killed. So they never cared enough to like search exactly how many died and who actually did it. So when somebody kind of got accused of it, they were just like, whatever, sure, that's you. Like years later, they realized, it was like 50 women. It was a whole lot of people that died from that person who was still, walking around while there was just a random person in prison.
Yeah,
those killings.
But it's an ongoing crisis in a lot of Indigenous communities, right? I'm looking up here to see if they have, and when I say recent, I mean they made a report on this like 5 years ago, or something like that, right? So it
came up pretty recently.
Not
even been 10 years.
Sorry, is this connected with the presence of Catholic Church?
Good. Yeah, so we'll get to that. So this will all come, by the way, to a head in like the Planetarity. By the way, I'm building towards it slowly, but great, good. So in 2014, I was looking at the statistics. In 2014, the RCMP reported that the number of missing and murdered Indigenous women has gone up to about 1,200, but Indigenous women's groups themselves document it to be closer to 4,000, right? Regardless of the number that you want to use, right? It's too many.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, right? It becomes almost morbid to try to actually count it, but it does give you some kind of scope. And so from the beginning, right, you get a text that is rooted in what you were saying, Leonie, earlier, historical and generational violence, right? Because yes, the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is a relatively recent one as far as the term is being used, right? It's roughly began in the 80s. But to come back to Marcio's point, this is something that has historical roots in the other thing that she mentioned, the residential schools, right? Which, when you were talking about the Catholic Church, that's where they come in, right? So, quick history lesson, most of those residential schools were run by the church, right? Catholic and Protestant alike. There was officially a division between church and state already by then, but usually they were funded by the state and run by the church, right? So there was kind of a connection there regardless, right? And the whole purpose of these residential schools, to put it in the terms of the time, was to remove the Indian from the child, right? By making them good little Catholic boys and girls, right? Now, how this fits in with what the narrator is going through, right, and what we've been discussing for the last few weeks, is that often, right, the language that we saw in Heart of Darkness of making Indigenous peoples from across the world dehumanized, right, in some sense, often through a language that approximates them to an extractable resource, right, was absolutely used in the Arctic contexts. With the Inuit that Tagaq is talking about is absolutely used throughout North America and South America as well, right? It's not an explicitly African thing as it was in Heart of Darkness. This is something that 100% was used rhetorically in order to justify domination and explicitly sexual violence as well, right? And I'm using this term very, very very heavily, I should say. It becomes easier for the people who use this kind of rhetoric to act the way they do if they dehumanize their subjects, right? I'm not saying it's justifiable. That's not what I mean when I say easier, right? What I'm saying is that that's how the logic perpetuates itself, right? And so that's kind of what we're starting off with in the book, right? 3 pages in, and you already have the generational trauma, the kind of implication of voice that you were bringing up, right? As well as the tying of all of this to a specific location in the Arctic, right? You get the major themes of the book in the first, 4 pages, right? Up until the image, I guess. We'll be generous and say up until page 5, right? Where we'll include a day in the life as that little bit of poetry, right? And you can think of it, right? The Arctic as this kind of barren and quote unquote virgin place, right? I'm using this term deliberately here, is one that you see often in the discourse, in the colonial discourse. And the Arctic as this quote unquote pure and white place, again, hint virginal here, is one that you see quite often, and it's what makes the Arctic, broadly speaking, as a fertile breeding ground for this type of colonial rhetoric. And this is why I brought this book in, which is a book by Rudy Wiebe called A Discovery of Strangers. And Wiebe in this book recreates the moment of colonization of the Arctic. And Wiebe himself is actually an excellent writer. I do recommend him. I didn't bring him in here to drag him. He's actually well recognized in Canadian literature circles for his sensitive and well thought out approach to minority groups, including Indigenous peoples. He himself is from a Mennonite community, and he also addresses such communities in his work. He's very well respected in his work, but he recreates this kind of this kind of rhetoric in this book. And I'm just going to read a few passages to give you a sense of what I'm talking about here. The land is so long, and the people traveling in it so few. The curious animals barely notice them from one lifetime to the next. The human beings whose name is Tetsutin live here with great care, their feet traveling year after year those paths where the animals can easily avoid them if they want to, or follow, or circle back ahead to watch them with little danger. Therefore, when the first 1 or 2 whites appeared in this country, an animal would have had to search for 4 lifetimes to find them being paddled about, or walking, or bent and staggering, somewhere on the inexorable land. And I only read this passage here for 2 things, right? The land is so long, right? It's a really interesting use of the term long, both in the sense of scope, right? If you've ever been, even if you haven't been to the Arctic, right? If you've looked at a field, that's covered in snow, right, in the winter here, right? What used to be like a cornfield during the summer is now just this flat expanse, right? Or if you've seen images of like the prairies during the winter, yeah, you'll see that. Where it's physically long, right? You can see for miles away, right? And kind of like the image that we were talking about, the J.M.W. Turner image, the horizon seems kind of imperceptible after a certain while. Yeah. So it's long in that sense, but long also in terms of time. Yeah. This kind of eternal element. But of course, he then finishes, once he introduces the colonial elements, right? The one or two whites that appeared every once in a while, with inexorable, right? So it's starting to shift into incomprehensibility, right? Not sublimity, but something that we need to try to make sense of, right? And often the way that it's made sense of in this rhetoric is in the way that we've been talking, right? One of conquest and well, what's the word I'm looking for? Doesn't matter. I'll think of it. I'll think of it later. But yeah, I think I just wanted to read that passage because I think it's a beautiful passage that really gets at the heart of what a lot of people think of the Arctic, right? And this is something that Tagaq is explicitly playing with in her text, right, or countering, right? I don't know, anything that people want to add right now. I'm kind of like going off on tangents, and I'm aware of this, and we've only gotten like 5 pages into the book. But is there anything that we want to add so far?
When you talk about how the land is long in terms of time,
good.
I was like literally fascinated with how time is talked about in so many of the passages.
Good. Yeah,
I've highlighted a bunch. But,
do you have one in particular that you want to share? That's an excellent transition, by the way. 10 out of 10. Yeah, no notes.
No, I was really like intrigued.
Yeah.
I thought like when you presented the course and you were like, oh, we'll talk about like deep time.
Yeah.
That's what I like. It clicked again. I'll try to.
I'm explicitly planning.
You do have a passage.
Yeah,
also.
I'm looking for mine as well. I highlighted one in particular, but where is it? By the way, I'm starting again with like depression mode, but I do plan where my end point is. Hopefully, is one of decolonial hope. So that's kind of where I'm hoping to lead us to, right? It may work, it may not work. I don't know, but that's where my envisioned end point is, because I don't want to end on pure depression. Okay. Yeah. What page are you on?
110
okay.
Here. It's one of them.
Oh, yes. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I highlighted, they say time is relative. It is. Humans have misunderstood time. Time is not rushing by. Time does not obey the clock. Time obeys physical laws like matter does, but it can control matter as well. Time is matter. Time is alive. Time's aware. Time has weight. Time mates with gravity to put you back into the earth. You do not travel through time. Time travels through you, drives you. Time is your conductor. Time is your demise. Time sleeps beside me as I lie on the surface of the ice to help my heartbeat slow and body temperature drop. That's what I want.
Is this the passage on the Northern Lights that you were talking about also, Marcio?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so... Okay, go ahead, please.
No. That means a lot to her, it seems like.
Good. So let's unpack that. Why do the Northern Lights make her think of the eternity of time, in this case? Or to put it in the terms that I put last class, right, that time is a flat circle. Walk us through that, right? What does what's the logic here? How does she get from point A to point B?
It's like she feels unbreakable.
Okay,
so
good.
Protected by the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
And this is where she probably gets the strength and the power to fight all the problems, all the difficulties she has in her true life or real life.
Mm-hmm.
Something Absolutely. Like that. Her connection with the nature is outstanding.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that use of the term outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's a good one, right? Outstanding being something that you don't necessarily, like, it's not part of normal life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I think that's one of the big elements of this whole story is the bringing in of the outstanding into the normal, right?
Yeah.
This is her life, right? Or this is something that she's turning into her life, right? And you're right. There's something beautifully outstanding about the Northern Lights, if you've seen them, right? A couple of weeks ago, I don't know if I talked to you about this. A couple of weeks ago, I saw some shooting stars, right? A couple of weeks ago. This was at the end of the summer, so before the semester started, right? Yeah, we managed to see some shooting stars, but like actual shooting stars that went from like one end of the sky to the next, right? And it does give you the same feeling that she's discussing here. Right?
You make a wish?
Well, of course. I made like 7 wishes at that point. Yeah. Unfortunately, they did not come true, and
not yet.
Yeah, not yet. Fascism is still around and all that, but God damn it. But you're right. She starts with a very outstanding sentence, right? The Northern Lights are in the sky. Very simple, straightforward sentence, but when you unpack what it implies, right, and what it means, it's incredible,
Mm-hmm.
right? She's there, and we find out at the end, lying on the surface of the ice, right, sleeping or just relaxing. And where does her mind immediately go? To the vast expanse of space, right? And this bizarre phenomenon wherein outer space and planet Earth kind of overlap, right? This is hugely reductive of what the Northern Lights actually are on like a physical level, but it is kind of that, right? It's kind of this overlap of outer space and planet Earth, creating this beautiful blanket, I think, to use your highly appropriate term here, both for the Earth and herself, right? She's lying down on the ice, but she's not cold, right? She doesn't express like, oh my God, I'm freezing to death here and I'm going to like die of hypothermia in about 5 minutes if I don't move, right? That's not at all what she says. On the contrary, right afterwards, it's not too cold, right? So I think that comparison of the Northern Lights with a blanket is very astute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. Now, how does this come into time? To come back to that question, how does that bring us into this vast expanse of time as she's experiencing it? Yeah, go ahead. No,
well, I don't know if it's what you're looking for, but it definitely like critiques the like. I don't know if it's like a colonial concept to like structure time the way we do.
How do we structure time?
Well, it's just it's very linear, and it's around productivity and how to like capitalism now, at least. And I like how she, on the following page, how she says, our minds are prisons, our secrets hidden in our flesh.
Yeah.
And then she says, like, context, perspective, scale. We are everything, we are all, we are nothing.
Yep.
So, like, I feel like this is probably, or maybe a more, if we do acknowledge, like, nature as this, like, sublime idea, it's a more accurate representation of what time really is like.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think this idea of time as colonial is 100% true. There have been like many books written on this. I'm not going to retread them, but yeah, you can think of it again to come back to the painting, right? What were we saying about the train itself, right? It moves in one linear direction over a fixed period of time, but nothing else around it does. Yeah, but I think you're also right insofar as our understandings and uses of time, and there's no better example of this than the clock, right? Who can tell me when the clock like first entered into like contemporary use or like our use as we understand it today?
I'm guessing a really long time ago.
You'd be surprised by how recent as far as like time scales are concerned. If we're thinking on a deep time scale, if we're thinking on a deep time scale, it is very recent.
I'm guessing maybe like I would say 18th century.
Yeah. So the contemporary clock, like obviously humans have managed to form some kind of mechanisms for really long times, right? Humans are very intelligent when we put our minds to it. We're capable of incredible things. But the clock as we have in, well, at least all on our wristwatches, on our wrists or just everywhere in the hallways, would have absolutely been expanding and getting into popular usage in the 18th century, right? And that says a lot, right? What did we talk about when we talked about the Romantics? Right? It was also the rise of, revolutionary, but also capitalism, right? Right. This notion of time and the planet as existing for human consumption and extraction, right, also coincides with our creation of clocks, right? And again, I'm not saying that there's some like nefarious conspiracy, right, of people who are like, yes, we're going to create clocks in order to control people's time a lot better, right? No one did that, right?
We don't know, maybe.
Maybe there was some psycho out there who's just like,
was like, you really need the clock to force people to just wake up and go to work.
I'm going to ruin generations of people.
Like, forget waking up with the sun. Now we have clocks.
Yeah. Screw the Kennedy assassination. That's a real conspiracy right there. But I think your point is well taken, Leonie, that instead of imposing a kind of linear clock-based time, right, on this land, what you see is this really interesting hierarchy playing out on this passage that you read. That is almost poetic, right? Yeah. Where we're starting off with kind of broad sky, right? The northern lights, so to speak. What did I write down afterwards? Right. And it brings her down to the Earth, broadly, right? The Earth is planet Earth. Ice, and her being there, and right, the concept of time. So it might actually be more accurate to focus in on her being, her like small being, which then kind of like expands out into time. That might be a more accurate way of depicting this overly complicated schema that may or may not have been intended. Right. But can you see this kind of maneuver that she does, right? From sky to planet to ice, her, and all of this, she realizes that the main consistent part is time, right? No matter what level she's on, right, or she's paying attention to, time is that consistent factor that animates all of these things. There's probably some kind of Heideggerian analysis that can be done here, right? His famous book, Being in Time. I don't want to start that, but, it's just something that came into my mind. Maybe or may not, it may or may not be a thing. I don't know, but that's where my mind goes. Yeah, and that's why she mentions things like time is matter, right? And time is alive, right? Because it's not that she can literally see time, right? By definition, you cannot, right? It's this artificial construct, right? That by its very nature is beyond our comprehension, right? But when we channel time through these elements, that's when it becomes matter. That's when it becomes alive, right? Like the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
Right.
She even there's like a personalization of
good. Yeah.
Time in certain passages. I think it's on page 55.
Good.
Again, she's like lying down on the ice. And she's like motionless. Second paragraph. 55. And laying on the ice for an unknown amount of time because time went for a walk.
Yeah. Yeah, time went for a walk.
I liked that.
I feel like I want that on a poster.
Time went for a walk.
Yeah. Just put whenever I'm not
that song there. Are you going to upload this?
I can absolutely upload the song. Yeah. I should put that on my office door so that when I'm not there, I just put like time went for a walk. No one's gonna bother me.
Currently unavailable.
Yeah, exactly. Time went for a walk.
But see, she does that with a lot of things.
Yeah.
She does that with
like nature elements. Yeah.
She just gives them a
Moon approves on that same page. That
cold
made me
bites
laugh.
my face.
Moon approves. Yeah. Or can my blood join the ocean currents in ritual? Right. It again gets through this idea of flow, right? Or what flows through you, or what part of you flows through the planet, right? Can my blood join the ocean currents in ritual? What's the answer to that? Yes, I would argue. By the end, she comes to the conclusion that, I would say so. It will, yeah. Good. Before we take a quick break, because it's already been a little bit over an hour, I just thought of this, and I want you to think about it passively during the break. Right after time went for a walk, she mentioned something very interesting on that passage. Ice in lung. Who noticed how often she repeats that term, that phrase?
I wrote it down. I was like, what does that mean?
Did you actually write it down?
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's cool. Yeah. So that phrase comes up very often in the text. Ice in lung.
Yeah.
In different contexts, right? It's not always fear in spleen and river of blood flowing in from my womb, right?
In the poems too, it's it's always there almost.
Yeah. Ice in lung is often the beginning of something else. Right? I didn't write down every single area that it showed up, but I want you to think about why. And when we come back, I'm going to go get some water. When we come back, we'll talk about that. Yeah, exactly. I hope you're ready. All right.
Especially if you say bon matin and it's not morning. They're like, oh, it's not morning anymore. And you're like,
okay, dude.
Just woke up. Literally, though. And that's pretty annoying.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, any kind of language policing is annoying. It removes from the magic of language, to come back to that one.
Like, it's a free country. I can talk however I want.
I love the overuse of, well.
You were going super far.
It has nothing to... There are no other areas where we need to be more free. It's specifically on syntax.
Language. I can say whatever.
Did you guys see that thing about Sally Rooney?
No.
Oh, man. So do you know who Sally Rooney is? Yeah.
She wrote Normal People. There's a TV show about it. She writes
really good.
So it's like on BookTok. No.
Yeah. So she's a really awesome writer.
Yeah.
If you want to check her out, she's an Irish writer.
Sorry, I'm like,
Yeah.
That I know, but
Like generally, I'm not a huge fan of like recommendations from Book Talk.
Mm.
But
her name again?
Sally Rooney.
yeah, but that can be
SALLY.
Oh yeah,
can be terrible.
Yeah, it can be, but in this case, they were correct. Normal People is genuinely good. I haven't read Intermezzo yet, but apparently it's awesome because it's been winning prizes left and right. And one of the prizes last week was given in the United Kingdom. I forget the name of the prize off the top of my head. It doesn't really matter right now. Hold on. But yeah, she actually couldn't be there, speaking of freedoms, because of her vocal support for Palestine Action, right? And it's been now, that group specifically, that advocacy group has been qualified as a terrorist group in the United Kingdom, and her advocacy of it would have made so that she might have been arrested if she actually went to get her her award. Yeah. The Sky Arts Award for Literature. Anyway, so it was a whole thing, and I was like, "This is a great planet to be on right now."
But especially in Britain right now, there's a lot happening.
Yeah, imagine once again being like the biggest empire on the world and like literally conquering anyone, and now your biggest export is transphobia and and bad tea.
Oh, that one felt personal.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, tea never came from Britain.
No, it never. No, that's why it's bad.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Never been yours.
This is the dunking on Great Britain section of the class. Stay tuned in 2 weeks for more dunking on Britain.
More Ireland anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, saying that now. I liked everything.
That being said, I do actually want to visit Great Britain one day. It does sound fun. But like,
it does look
I was
beautiful.
there last year. It was great.
Yeah.
It has its issues.
Yeah.
It sounds really expensive.
Yeah, I have a friend who went there with $1,000 budget, and she wanted to cry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did not last her that long. Yeah.
Just changing the money is terrible.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because $1,000 is what, like 550 pounds or something like that. It's the exchange rate is awful. You just get wrecked.
Do you think euros are like this is worse?
Yeah. Anyway, ice and lung. To make a
ice and lung
jagged and nonsensical return.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do we think about that repetition? Right? Why would she constantly return to this image or this feeling of ice and lung? Yeah, go ahead.
Passage here.
Yeah. What page are you on?
55.
Okay, you're back on that.
The verse, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And here you have ice and lung, fear and spleen, and river of blood flowing. Yep. Well, I feel like she's talking about death. Death is imminent.
Mm-hmm.
Once I watched the movie that people said there, if you walk in the extreme weather for a couple of minutes and your lungs are going to be full of the ice here, and you're going to be dead in a time of minutes and something like that. That's the idea. And I feel like she is above that. She can walk and she feels like she's invincible. And no matter what she does, ice and lung is there for her, but she's above of that because she's kind of protected by the nature.
Good. Yeah, I really like that. Let's expand on that. So, I've mentioned Timothy Morton before in this class, so I'll bring him up again. Might as well. One of the points that I remember him talking about in a lecture I listened from him was the idea that death is the lack of motion. Right? You stopped. Right? It is constant repetition. Right? And just the flattening out of whatever you're talking about, right? Whether it's senses or just life, breathing. That's why when I talked about poetry, right, and cold poetry, that's why you'll notice a lot of death-related poetry is very repetitious, right? It gives that sense of like, oh my God, right? I'm just slowly getting close to death because of this cold repetition, right? And awful consistency. Right? And you can think of the exact opposite when we were talking about the Percy Shelley poem, right? Mont Blanc. Mm-hmm. It's the exact opposite, right? It's a constantly changing poem, right? It's very hot to use that term again, right? It's constantly changing. There's no consistency to it, and you never feel more alive than when you read that poem, right? And Shelley never feels more alive in that poem, despite talking about ice, right? At many moments in that work. So I think you're absolutely correct, right, Marcio, in getting to that. And this is something that people often talk about in relation to the Arctic landscape, right, is that it is this space of death, both because you have a very real fear of dying of cold, right, if you don't actually prepare yourself properly for being in those conditions. But also, right, the perceived lack of life. I say perceived here very selectively. Yeah, the lack of lush trees or green grass or anything like that gives the illusion of very real death. Yeah, but of course it's anything but. There is life everywhere in the Arctic. Yeah, both on a very real level that we often talk about. The animals that live there. There's life happening under the ice, right? Bacteria and moss, et cetera, et cetera. No, obviously moss seems like completely insignificant in comparison, but like it is a form of life, right? Is what I mean. And you even, arguably, there's been some really interesting studies about this, right? The ice itself can be seen as a kind of form of life, right? Insofar as, even if it's quote unquote inanimate, and the inanimacy, or I guess the life of inanimate objects is something that we can think of, especially in relation to what we're going to be talking about next class when we talk more explicitly about rock. But even inanimate things like ice can be argued as having some kind of life to them, right? Because they do legitimately have an impact on how we operate. Yeah. Entire history has changed based off of an iceberg, right? It's in this text that she mentions the Northern Passage, right? What was the Northern Passage if not an attempt to circumvent ice, right? You literally changed where people navigated and how people operated on the face of the earth based on this inanimate object. I don't know what that is if not a form of life, right? That can engage with the world around it, right? So I think you're absolutely right, Marcio, in getting to that thing, just to come back to to ice and lung, right? It's the simultaneous indicator of death, right? Ice and lung, you would think that would kill you, right? You're literally stopping your breathing, and yet it doesn't, right? It's it almost makes her thrive. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I keep using awesome because you guys are awesome, but
I like this word.
Yeah. It's my favorite word, along with things. What else can we get from ice and lung, or do we want to expand on what we just said? I'm trying to look for another place where they mention ice and lungs. And since you wrote down so many of them, you can maybe help us with that one. Let's see.
A few pages later, but it's in the same
section.
Not section, but it's in the same idea.
Okay.
It conveys, but it's on pages On page 63.
63. Okay.
But right before on 62, she says, "We are the land,
Mm-hmm.
same molecules and same atoms. The land is our salvation, save our souls." And then you move on to the next page, just like space. And she says, "The land is our salvation. Breathe, fuck, feel. Empathy is for those who can afford it. Ice will crack, blood will flow. Sun and ice and lime. Speaker of tongues. There are so many ways to be empty. Ice and lime again.
Mm-hmm.
Flush of cheek, blood and mouth."
Good. What do we make of that passage? I think there's something really interesting going on in this passage that adds on to what we just said about it.
Right before you have something about airplanes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good.
And that's the thing. Where is that? None of the plane in the page 63.
Mm-hmm.
Right before you have there. None of the planes can fly past the lines of sentries, and that feels like no matter what man is supposed to create in order to beat nature will always prevail.
Yeah.
And this is the place where some depths can offer, no matter how powerful our technology is.
Yeah. I like that, right? And it's so absurd when you think about it, right? Because there's not the planes go over the Arctic all the time. Yeah. We choose not to, mostly because nobody lives up, or yes, people live up there, obviously, but like very few people live up there, so often there are no planes that go there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like she takes that one step further into the more metaphorical territory of nature overcoming even the sky, right? And our presumed mastery of the sky with planes. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah.
And down there, she still have SOS down there, save our souls. Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Which, by the way, fun fact, is not what SOS is, right? We've retroactively attributed "Save Our Souls" to SOS, but it was never that.
Mm-hmm.
It was just an easy thing to do with Morse code. It's pure coincidence that it also fits with "Save Our Souls." Another way in which magic, the magical language. Yeah, we just kind of retroactively attribute things to other things.
Of course, you knew that.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons also why the Titanic sank, is because at the time there was no consistent call for help. So the Titanic was using one of them, and the nearest ship didn't understand what it was actually saying. It was just understanding gibberish.
Oh, that's super sad.
Yeah, that's super sad. And it's after the Titanic that it was consistently made into SOS.
Yeah, they must have said, like, we all need to learn this.
Yeah. It's exactly that. Yeah, because before that, it was every country had their own.
Yeah.
Yep.
I see how that would
be a problem. It was a big problem. Anyway. Yeah, please.
I don't know what to make of like empathy in that passage. Like,
where are we?
Empathy is on page 63. Like, empathy is for those who can afford it. And then followed by that passage. And she also says, like, there's like a short sentence on page 61, empathy is not for nature.
Yeah.
Like, the way also it's, like, that little sentence is a paragraph for itself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, like, it, like, my eye was, like, drawn to it, but I don't know what to do with it.
When do we feel empathetic? Like, think of the emotion of empathy. Right? Let's get cynical for a minute. Right? When we actually feel empathy, what's another way of saying that?
Pity.
Bingo. Okay. Is pity a good thing to have?
Not really.
Not really, right?
I see it as a condescending thing of like,
good.
Pity does that sometimes. It's like,
and I'm not
that kind of face they make.
Yeah,
I see it in my head.
And I see Marcio's confused face. I'm not saying that it's bad to have empathy.
Pity has like a negative connotation, as empathy sounds like a good thing. It's more positive to me.
Yeah.
And pity just sounds...
Think of it this way. You feel good when you have pity for someone, right? It makes you feel good. It's like, I'm a good person. Yeah. because I demonstrated to myself that I have the necessary emotions to feel something for someone else. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When someone pities you, does it feel good? Like if you receive pity?
Not really.
Not really.
Not
Yeah.
at all.
Good. Okay.
No.
So what were you going to say?
It kind of like reminded me of when we talked about, I don't know if it was Shelley or Blake's poem,
Uh-huh.
and we talked about
I wanted to bring it back to Blake.
was it because nature was seen as a woman, and we talked about how do we need to humanize it
Mhm.
to actually feel for it or for her.
Yes. Good.
It reminds me of that.
Good. Okay. Yeah. So absolutely. That's what she means, I think, when she writes empathy is not for nature.
Yeah.
Right. Nature, as we keep bringing up, is consistently demonstrated as a powerful planetary, to bring it back to the language of our course, force in some way, right? It doesn't need our help, so to speak. It exists on its own, and it exists as its incredible force and forcing, right? Where the foxes exist, and there's this beautiful northern lights that have no care whatsoever about what we're doing on this planet. Right? We care because we're consistently seeing the northern lights less and less, but that's not the northern lights problem. That's our problem, right? So I guess what to bring it back to what I said earlier, right? Would nature want to be pitied? Is perhaps a better way of framing that. And I think that's what she's getting at in saying, no, right? Nature would not want to be pitied. The people who are deserving of pity is perhaps the humans that commit the violence, right? Or the animals, right, that are impacted, right?
Could it also be the other way around of like, because she does mention like when she talks about time, but also the limited time that humans will be on this earth, kind of, could it be also that once we've done enough damage, like nature won't pity us, like it'll just, the earth will just burn up and then have life again in other forms, kind of thing. It'll get rid of us once you've done enough damage.
Okay, yeah, good. I mean, that is a vision that some people have, right? And it kind of
like
fits in with
both, like the empathy we feel, but nature also doesn't have like the time or like the ability to feel empathy for us.
Yeah.
It's just not the way it works.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird because you can make it depends how you kind of see it, right? Because some people will make the very, I think, astute and on some level correct claim that humans are also a part of nature, right? We emerged as part of nature, but our major distinguishing factor is that we also have the ability more than ever before to change every single aspect about nature, right? But I think you're absolutely right insofar as like if we want to separate humans from nature, right, or the planet as its own agent, to put it in Spivak's terms from last week, we can absolutely see the planet as kind of not caring for us in the long scope of things.
In the same way, humans in general don't seem to care for it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I think it's a really interesting. I think you're correct in pointing to the subversion of time here. Right. The planet thinks on a scale of infinite time. Right. But we don't. We think on human time. Yeah. Right. Which makes sense. We're humans. Our brain can only take so much. Right. But it does absolutely have an impact in how we relate to one another. Right. Good. I was gonna, to add another thing to the Blake connection that you made, Lynn. He has a poem that we didn't talk about, but it's called "The Human Abstract." It's also, is it in Songs of Experience or Songs of Innocence? It's in the collection of that one. I forget which one. I think it's in Experience. And there's a line that's incredible. It goes, "Pity would be no more if we did not make somebody poor." Right? and the basic. Obviously, he's not talking on a planetary scale here, right? That's not what he's addressing. But that reflex that we're talking about here is one that is also reflected in Blake. If you want to create that further connection, right? Insofar as pity only exists if we make it so that someone is there to be pitied. Yeah. And again, the Earth, I don't think, would want itself to be constructed as something to be pitied, right? I keep wondering if I'm bothering someone because I keep hearing people walk by, and I don't want to bother anyone. Yeah,
they're not staying.
Yeah, no, exactly. Okay, yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. As a kind of answer to empathy is not for nature. I think the for here is basically the key.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to. So, yes, the ice and lung. We never finished that one. That I brought up. So we were on 62? 60, yeah, 63. Sorry, I closed the book and I shouldn't have. Okay, but she does an interesting move here on the level of construction. Right. If we look on 63, yeah, the one that starts, the land is our salvation. Right. So notice what she's actually talking about. Right. With the flow again. Right. To come back to that idea. Empathy is for those who can afford it. Again, Blake alarms ringing. Ice will crack, blood will flow, sun in ice, ice in lung. Speaker of tongues, there are so many ways to be empty. Ice in lung, flush of cheek, blood in mouth, right? There's a rhythm that's kind of created here, a flow. But also on a visual level, notice what's happening with the word ice, which is interestingly, by the way, always capitalized as if it were a proper noun, right? Which in English we attribute to people generally or places. But notice that it kind of also flows, right? Ice in ice, 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 and then it flows again, ice in lung, and then is explicitly connected to the flow of blood, right? Ice, in a kind of counterintuitive way, becomes its own river, right? Or is this own thing that is capable of flow, right? Which we tend not to imagine, but makes total sense, right? When we look at an iceberg, for example, or just a snowy patch, right, we don't notice it as shifting, right, or changing in any way, shape, or form. It's like, again, to foreshadow what we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks, it's kind of like a rock. Yeah, you look at a rock and you're like, well, it's always been like that, and it's always going to be like that. Yeah, but no, right? Ice is constantly moving, right, either with the active erosion, or snow being piled on top of it, humans walking across it, animals walking across it, water, etc., right? The heat of the earth. All of these things make it so that ice is anything but, I guess, ice, right? Frozen. Right, actually, yeah, ice is anything but frozen. Would be a perhaps poetic way of saying that. And I think that's one way that we can think about this concept of ice and lung, because despite it being a vehicle for air, right, it is something that flows, right, as well, the lungs, right. So there is that connection as well to flowing and constant circulation that she's associating with this thing that we assume is stable and consistent, but isn't. Yes, please.
Sorry.
No, please.
There's something that is not clear for me.
Yeah.
This expression here is speaker of tongues. So why did she put this term here? It kind of escaped from her previous thinking here.
I don't. I would make it. So, do you know what a speaker of tongues is? Like, what the expression actually means to speak in tongues? Okay, so to speak in tongues is an expression in English. I don't know what the direct translation would be in French or Portuguese. I'm sorry, I don't speak Portuguese. But it's basically to speak gibberish.
Gibberish?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, you used another expression to speak nonsense.
Okay.
But it's often used, or it was used. It's less used now. It was often used in older forms of English to disparage other cultures, right? Like, oh, they're saying nonsense. They're speaking in tongues, even if they were just speaking their language, right? Especially, by the way, this was especially used in rituals, right? Where we understand, in English, if you go to church or anything like that, right, you'd understand what the songs are about, right, because we understand that language. The people who usually said, like, oh, they're speaking in tongues, would be listening to ritual chants or any kind of religious song and be like, well, they're just saying nonsense, right? And there's that kind of disconnect that's happening there. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Sometimes also it was an explicit part of the way that people spoke about rituals because they would see things like what today we would call like shamanic practices or shamanic practices, wherein people enter kinds of trances and just speak in ways that are incomprehensible in the moment. Yeah, you see that this is an actual phenomenon that there's like video evidence of. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's fascinating to actually see. And again, often we would say that those people are speaking in tongues. Right?
So in this case, the ice is speaking, and none can understand it, or almost not a large number of people can understand what is going on here.
Good. Can she understand what it's saying? She being the narrator here.
Maybe she.
Maybe.
Yeah. Because she is so connected with nature, with ice, and repeating.
Could it also, like, because I think language is also an important, like, theme of the. Am I losing my?
Yes.
I think like language is also, it comes back a few times in the novel with the teacher and how like with like assimilation they lost the connection to language. That's true. But could it be like, could that idea of like constantly moving and evolving also, that ices that blood has too? Could it also be related to language in a sense?
I would say so. Yeah, and this is something that you see a phenomenon of in revival movements, right, for languages across the world. We can speak obviously in for the indigenous context, but you saw this a lot, for example, to come back to the Irish, what we were talking about, but when there was like a Celtic revival movement in the 60s, that you saw a similar phenomenon happening, where the first words that people would learn again would be words connected to the world, right, or to concepts of the planet, right. So that's a kind of interesting phenomenon where you're right. We kind of inherently want to readopt languages or that have been lost, right, or eliminated from historical communities, and that our reflex is to kind of associate that with some kind of natural or planetary situation. I think that's very, very appropriate.
In the way it's like placed in the paragraph. You were saying like speaker of tongues, there's kind of like a disconnect with the idea of like not being able to understand or speak a language. So like for it to be placed differently, like highlighted or separated a little bit from the rest, was interesting.
Yeah, and it ties in again with all the other texts that we've read so far, right? What are these other authors that we were saying, that we were talking about, saying, if not that the land is speaking in tongues, right? The central element of a lot of those texts was, I cannot understand what the land is saying.
That's true.
Just like in that video.
Just like in the video. Good. Yes.
Yeah.
Misery.
Like my mind
first one,
Showed it to my
The
roommate.
first one you mentioned, Patrick, the first one you mentioned, the first video about the Death Alley.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, good.
They were the lores there at that back to the past there.
Yeah.
And then he mentioned something like, "Oh no, the people, the slaves, they bury their people, and they have some ritual there that we don't understand. They are speaking their that's gibberish.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be right.
Yeah. Good.
Cool.
And okay, so this is really interesting because we're going to get into music, I guess, now. Might as well. Like, very brief tangent back to music. I promise it'll be brief. But you saw this a lot, speaking of like Louisiana, like birthplace of the blues, for example, right? And historically speaking, blues music, as we understand it today, was a literal amalgamation of cultures and languages coming together in order to create a new language that we now understand as blues, right? It was slave songs, right? Or songs that were sung by slaves, I should say. And indigenous peoples, right? And actually also Irish peoples a little bit later, right? That would kind of mix themselves into, I guess, what you could call a kind of new tongue, right? And express a kind of language that was common to all of them and their experience in some kind of deep generational way, right? And that comes back, of course, to this whole idea of the planet, right? When we talked about it on week one of slaves being transported across the planet and that literally having an impact on how we engage with the world, right? That language would have come across. Right? When cultures and communities encounter themselves for the first time, right, and create what we call like pidgin languages, not pigeon the bird, but pidgin, P-I-D-G-I-N, right? That's the term for kind of very rapid languages that are formed in common. Again, you see first words of basic necessities that are developed, right? Water, money, etc. Right? But also words of land, right? That are also among those first terms that are said in common. Right? So you can probably have like a connection there to how people sing their songs or talk about certain aspects of the living and the dead, right? On that scale also. I don't know if any of this tangent made sense, but
it did.
It did, yeah. Okay.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not gibberish.
It's not gibberish. Good. Sometimes I do feel like I'm speaking in tongue. Yeah, you looked like you were going to say something.
No, I'm good. I love that gibberish has been added to your dictionary.
It should, yeah.
It's a good word.
Yeah. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about before changing topics towards coming back, I think, more explicitly to the sexuality part, is that section just before on 62. We are the land, same molecules, same atoms. The land is our salvation. Save our souls. So, Marcio, you brought up SOS. What else does the idea of salvation and save our souls bring up? What other kind of image does that conjure?
To me, it sounds like something they would hear from Catholic churches.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, we are here as your salvation. We are here to serve your souls.
Good.
Because that's how they brought the whole, we're coming here to save you from yourselves, basically.
Yeah, good. So
sounds like that.
That's excellent. So we see this kind of interesting transposition of a Christian language, right, of salvation, which is the basis of that religion, right, into a non-Christian idea. Right? And we saw this, by the way, with Blake, right? That was the whole thing that we saw with the introduction to Songs of Experience and Earth's Answer, right? And Blake himself was thoroughly engaged in the idea of Christianity, right? Except he didn't see it as contradictory with a view of the planet as something beautiful to engage with, right? He didn't see that contradiction in his vision of Christianity. And that's why we still tolerate Blake. I should say that's I shouldn't say that, but so my question, I guess, is a very difficult one. How do we reconcile the spirituality in this book, right? Because it is explicitly spiritual as a text, right? But on the one hand, it is actively against one kind of spirituality, which we saw in like a very, I think, healthy way in Blake, right? But it's actively going against that type of spirituality and developing a new kind of spirituality in this text. Did we think of that in any way? Like how this spirituality comes across, in what forms, why it might be important? Because a lot of the planetary language that is used in contemporary theory is a very scientific one, right? And I have nothing against that, of course, right? But this is also a very non-scientific book, right? In the most explicit way possible, right? Yes, she brings up molecules and atoms, right? So scientific language, but then shifts it into a spiritual frame of we are all those atoms and molecules, right? To put it in the terms of the Adam Curtis documentary, that's kind of become a meme, unfortunately, but she's kind of saying you're the universe thinking of itself, right? Which is one of my favorite lines I've ever heard in a documentary. But so what do we? I don't know if did we make anything of this. This is obviously not a spiritual class, right? I'm not a theologian, but I think it is an inevitable part of the text that should be thought through in some way, shape, or form.
It does bring me back to the first thought I had.
Yeah.
It does feel like a reaction to pain or like trauma.
Good. Yeah.
The very obvious and clear refusal to, or not refusal, but she's really against the Christian view. It's very obvious in different instances in the book. It seems to be done with intensity.
Yeah. I think the intensity is an important part here, right? Because that's, I think, part of a lot of religious experiences or spiritual experiences for people, right? No matter what the religion, I should say, by the way. She's explicitly taking shots at Christianity for historical reasons. Yeah. But the intensity that she then grabs onto, I think, can be very spiritual for some people, right? That's the kind of heart for a lot of ceremonies, right? That we see happening basically throughout human history, right? Is capturing that kind of intensity that you don't in your regular life. Right? When people enter into trances, that's kind of what's happening, right? Is an overwhelming or an excess of feeling. And I would argue this is as good of a time as any to tie back to the Northern Lights thing that you were bringing up, Marcia. How is that spiritual? You can maybe look at the image that's on page 148. And then I have another image from a different artist afterwards that we can maybe think through. Looking for a specific passage. Two pages later, after that image, you get, if you are living in silence with violence in your bones, sorrow in your marrow, blood running cold, heal I beg you, heal I beg you, heal I beg you, heal. To me, I kind of read that as a prayer. You can disagree with me on this, by the way. Like, that is totally okay. The kind of repetition is one that you see in so many calls to prayer, right? Throughout cultures here, right? And I really find it's an interesting move on her part. And it ties back into the repetition of Isa's lung, right? Constantly coming back to these ideas. To use the obvious example, right? In Christianity, you constantly hear invocations of Jesus, our Lord and Savior, right? In Islam, right, they start their call to prayer with Allah wa Muhammad Rasulullah, right? And it's constantly repeated, right? This kind of repetition is part of entering into a really interesting trance. And that's the basis, by the way, of a lot of meditation, right? Is repeating until you lull yourself into another state. Right? Has anyone ever actually tried meditation here?
Yeah. Never tried it.
Like actually dedicating yourself to it and like taking it seriously can be worth it.
But that's the thing.
Yeah.
I would never take that seriously.
Right. Yeah. But again, I'm not saying like taking it seriously in the sense of, and I think this is another answer that we can go for here. I'm not taking it in the sense of, you have to do it in order to believe in like some bearded man in the sky, right? Like not on a literal level of that, right? But in the sense of letting go, right, through meditation is actually a really interesting experience, right? That I think, again, this kind of gets at, right? And when we were talking about the Northern Lights in relation to this, I think that's also what she's getting at, is this kind of letting go on a mental level and a bodily level that you really do, that people do get, I should say. I say we as if this is something that we do in this class. It's not, but that people who are explicitly spiritual do tend to talk about as an experience that they've lived. I don't know. Maybe you have nothing to say about it. It's fine. It's not an easy question to have. It's just something that came to my mind as I was reading.
I'm still at that question there. How do you reconcile spirituality in this book? And that's the answer I'm still looking for.
Yeah.
How could I answer this?
With time and patience.
Cool.
Meditate on it for a bit. Because it does seem like a bit of a contradiction, right? Blasting one kind of spirituality and then embracing another. So what do we make of that?
When we talk about this spirituality and religion, you can embrace all of them.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, if you are actually embracing one of them, you are automatically denying the other ones.
I wonder, though, because you do see people kind of mix and match. Not necessarily effectively. But you do see people try. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
like, oh, I like this little bit from Buddhism. I like this little bit from, I don't know.
I think it's from letting go.
Zoroastrian.
You need to let it go. It's like you can understand it, you can believe in it, but you can also see it from different perspective.
Okay.
So, like, spirituality is more like I believe in what I believe, and I let the other things go because if other people believe in it, at least they believe in something. So, I guess in a way, it's since you're so into your state, your trance, you're more like it's easier to just feel it than be against it.
Ooh, interesting. Just kind of like let it wash over you type of thing. Isn't there a period in this book where she talks about like a wave washing over her? Along similar lines?
With a bear, but I don't know if that's the passage.
About the bear?
Yeah, I know.
Like the 100-foot tall bear or whatever? Yeah.
I don't know if that was the passage. There was water.
Oh, actually, yeah, on 137. It's not explicitly what I was thinking about, but it works for this. I put my head under the water for as long as I can. I am pure. This baptism does not belong to Christians. This baptism belongs to the land. I prop myself up on my elbows and let the waves put their hands around my throat. All of a sudden, I am thirsty, very, very thirsty, too thirsty. Right? The way I read this is kind of similar to what you were saying, Alicia, where to me, what you read are the surface level ceremonies of Christianity, right? Being taken away from their kind of traumatic contexts, right? Right? Because I do think on some level there is a connection here with what Blake is talking about and what Tagaq is talking about, although obviously in entirely different contexts, right? Blake is not interested in the ceremony of it, right? The whole like baptism of like putting the cross on the baby's forehead and all that pomp and circumstance. But he is interested in the feeling that is supposed to be evoked from this, right? And that's what she's kind of getting, right? Removing the historical baggage, but getting at what is actually claimed to be offered by these spiritual notions, right? And in this case, tying it less to some notion of a sacrificial lamb and more to, I would argue, something even more powerful, right? At least in my way of conceiving it, right? Again, you can feel entirely free to disagree with me on this one, right? Which is, of course, the planet. And there is something, I think, about this being one of the entry points into what we're slowly building towards, and I hope you're kind of seeing the pieces of the puzzle being formed here, of hope. Right? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, what does spirituality give people? Hope. Yeah.
Hope for something better, or at least some kind of redemption.
Yeah. So on the Christian level, that's absolutely what is explicitly offered.
Oh yeah.
Right. But yeah, absolutely. But of course, for the narrator of the book, that never went anywhere. All Christianity offered her was sexual assault. Mm-hmm. Right, and a removal of her future. Right. So quite the opposite of hope. Right. But the move for her towards spirituality is one that still does engage with that promise of hope that was never fulfilled. Right? And you see this, right, with the explicit use of the term baptism. Right? In the Christian tradition, baptism is one that is meant to guarantee your entry place into heaven, right? Or to kind of start off on that journey of entering into heaven, which is the ultimate goal for the Christian perspective, entering into this like land of milk and honey in the sky or whatever. It depends on who you ask of that. I'm not. I don't want to be flippant where it's not necessary. But then she readopts that term of baptism. Right? It's not just for Christians. It belongs to the land, right? So she's giving that sense of hope explicitly to the land. And then I'll get some water after. We have a really good transition into the next topic I wanted to talk about, unless you had anything else you wanted to do. I open my legs wide and let the water flow into me.
Where is this?
It's the same page on 137, just down from the baptism page.
Oh, okay.
I open my legs wide and let the water flow into me. Fully bringing in the notion of, sexuality and the planet.
Yeah, consensual.
Consensual, yeah. Importantly, here. Good. I'm going to go get some water, and we'll keep this going when we come back. If you have any questions, of course, don't hesitate. But I think that's a good place to stop right now. So, yeah.
It goes back to because it is still an Inuktitut, so.
Yeah. Which was only invented, by the way, in the 1950s as a language. Yeah, it was Okay, so fun fact. You can see. Don't say you don't learn anything in this class.
I love myself a good fun fact.
Yeah, exactly. Fun fact. So it was actually created by missionaries for Bible translations. Yep. So for people who think that that's not necessarily a recent phenomenon, the whole idea of colonization. So it's relatively recent.
Oh, wow.
So this whole alphabet, it's not the only reason why they did it, but it's one of the major drivers was to be able to translate Western ideas much more easily and on paper, right? So another way in which this text is kind of interestingly radical, right? Using a written medium for a novel, if you can call it this. I don't know if you can qualify this as a novel formally, but kind of breaking down the conventions of the novel as a form, right? A form that historically has been used to colonial effect. Part of the ways that colonial Europeans kind of justified their supremacy was by the existence of written forms, right? Such as the novel or poems over oral forms that existed across the world, including in Europe, but people tend to coincidentally forget that one. But yeah, it's an interesting move for the Inuktitut to use the written form to then include that as something that very likely most people would not have understood, even though it was made explicitly to be understood by Europeans. So it's kind of like a weird subversion going on, and now I'm looking for that passage where it is, and I cannot find it for the life of me.
Maybe you're in the book.
It's closer to the end.
It's closer to the end?
No, to there was a table with all the signs and letters. It's closer.
The table is on page 48. Okay. And then the passage is on page 53.
Okay, it was way too late. Yeah. And it's a really interesting juxtaposition, right, between that text and just before that, I see your face change, I see you. And then the I see you is kind of contrasted with what most readers, I assume, most readers of this text would not have been able to perceive. Beyond just symbols on a page. Okay. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just hungry.
Oh, okay. half an hour, and then we'll. Okay, so have any of you ever heard of the artist Kent Monkman?
No.
Not really.
Really? I actually ordered one of his books recently. He has a really interesting perspective on art, where he tends to take Renaissance style art, right? Think Michelangelo or Raphael, right? Who would paint these incredible paintings of humans doing godlike things or interacting with gods in some way, shape, or form, right? Just think of the Sistine Chapel. I'm sure you've seen images of this, even if you haven't seen it in real life, right? So you know broadly what I'm saying when I say Renaissance style art. So he tends to take these types of paintings and either modify them or play off of the expectations of them in really interesting ways. And I have an image here that I pulled up of his that I think is a really good way of introducing us to some of the contexts of sexuality that Tanya Tagaq brings up. Because you'll notice that Monkman's interests are both planetary and queer, right? For the context of this class, we're not necessarily going to start unraveling like what exactly we mean by queer. I mean it in like the umbrella term of like LGBTQ. Yeah, I'm going to show you this, and as usual, I would like you to give me your impressions. I'm sure you've never seen a painting like this in your life. I hoped to have received his book in time for today to like bring it to class, but I didn't, so maybe for next class.
What is that?
Exactly. Yeah. So what do you see? Yeah, fox, wolf. I'm not sure.
It looks more like a coyote, actually.
Or a coyote. Yeah, that would make sense.
Because of the color of the
Coyote,
fur.
yeah.
Yeah, it's more beige than a wolf is, and the fox is really more orange.
Oh, you are really, really good at that, huh?
If you go a little bit outside of Montreal, you'll see a few foxes.
Actually, I did.
Okay,
yeah,
not foxes, but coyotes.
Yeah, not coyotes, foxes.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah. He got into hot water a little bit.
Are those pterodactyls?
Yeah, I assume
dinosaurs?
So. Yeah, dinosaurs. Yeah.
Love the heels too.
Yeah.
Wow.
He got into a bit of hot water a few years ago when Justin Trudeau was still president because he depicted him in one of his paintings in like a rather unsavory light.
Oh no.
You can look it up. I'm not going to show you that. But yeah, it's he takes risks. We'll say it. We'll put it that way. What do we make of this painting? Right, when we see this, what comes to mind? And we'll slowly connect it to Tagaq's work.
Mine has no boundaries.
Good, I like that. Yeah.
Nothing that is like depicted seems to be only like one thing that fits a very restrictive category.
Yeah, good. You can kind of, at least the first thing that came to my mind was kind of a reflection of this, right, with the earth at the bottom.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like slowly moving up towards the sky, except it's slightly inverted though, with the human-ish figures being in the middle instead. But I guess it kind of fits in with what Marcio was saying, the mind having no limits.
Yeah, and it has some connection with the past because we have creatures that no longer exist.
Yeah,
and,
good.
However, it's connected to the present.
Arguably, that never existed. I don't know if pterodactyls were ever pink and weirdly sexualized. I don't know.
No, but you see one that's like just
flying there.
That's true. Yeah, on the corner there. Yeah,
it's not pink. Probably more realistic.
Oh, is this another one of them?
Yeah, just right there, right? On the close
I
to
felt
the
like a
earth.
bat or something.
I love these first reactions that people get. That's exactly how I reacted the first time I saw his work. I was like, "Oh my god,
Yeah,
this is
kind
gonna."
of strange in a way. There's like a planet.
Mhm.
It's like on the background, closer to the sun, but it also looks like the Earth.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Kind of feels like a circle in a way, or just like repetition.
Yeah. yeah. There are like weird doublings and repetitions happening, right? Of this kind of Earth-like planet. There's more than one pterodactyl, more than one human-like figure, but they're always kind of like off, right, in some way, shape, or form.
Maybe they are praying or hoping for something.
Hoping for what?
Oh.
Because I do think there is an
I'm just trying to make a connection between this and here and I don't know.
So think of like the Renaissance paintings that I mentioned earlier. If you had to like make the Michelangelo version of this, right? Or pick whatever Renaissance painter you want to have, like the Raphael version of this, right? If it were painted on the Sistine Chapel, obviously it wouldn't look like this, but there would be structural elements that would be quite similar.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of pterodactyls, what would it probably be in like a conventional Renaissance painting?
Definitely the gods.
Gods or angels. Yeah, good. Instead of a wolf man, right? What today we might call a furry. As soon as I said it, I was like, "There's no going back for this." Right. So, what on one hand we would like this weird wolf creature and a human. What would we have probably in a conventional Renaissance painting? If not angels, what would we have? Think of like the classic Renaissance painting.
Like, gods and goddesses are like men, men, women.
Gods and goddesses, men, women, man and God, perhaps Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a beautiful place, blue sky.
Yeah, there's almost like a Garden of Eden type of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. Yeah, you might have an Adam and Eve type figure.
Mm-hmm. They're on the little clouds. They're always on the little clouds.
Yeah. In the context of Renaissance painting, like it makes symbolic sense, right? Of like the elevation of humanity or the elevation of gods, however you want to. Depends on the artist.
The same level, the same pattern. Humans seen as gods, and gods at the level of humanity.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and would the Earth be in the same position? Like, what would be the Earth like in a conventional Renaissance painting? Would we see it from this perspective?
I don't know.
Yeah, because I think this would be the trickier question to answer here. In a lot of Renaissance, I would argue that in a lot of Renaissance paintings, you wouldn't see it at all from this perspective.
That's what I thought.
They would not be in space; they would be firmly rooted on Earth.
Because usually the background is blue.
Yeah, blue.
Or at least it's not space-like.
Or a forest. Yeah. I'm thinking of the Botticelli painting, The Birth of Venus, right? The one with the woman Venus, in this case, in the big seashell, right? Fantastic painting, if ever you have a chance to see it. It's a lot bigger in real life, by the way, than I expected. It's like the size of a wall.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's usually that. I mean, it's like the most paintings you think are super big or super little.
Yeah, like the Mona Lisa is the famous example of that. Yeah.
She's so tiny.
Yeah, but Monkman, by the way, recreates that. He does create these like full-sized paintings, and he has multiple artists working on it, like the Renaissance masters did at the time, too. So there's a lot of parallels here, but he's kind of like, again, warping it into a really interesting way, right? Like we said, elevating. We're going cosmic with it. We're going queer with it. We're going.
Yeah, the colors are very bright.
Colors are a lot brighter and not what you'd expect.
No.
Right? Because in a lot of Renaissance paintings, you would have very earthy colors usually, or like natural colors. Your browns, your greens, your blues. Very rarely red. Yeah. Certainly not pink.
That's super coral. Like,
Yeah.
very, very.
Yeah.
That reminds me of cotton candy.
Yes.
Yeah, around here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought
It's
so
the
too.
most toxic cotton candy type.
Yeah.
It doesn't look very healthy.
When is cotton candy healthy? What are you saying?
Yeah.
That's what makes it delicious. Is because it gets you close to
Like
disgusting.
dissolving your teeth for sure.
Oh, good. Yeah. Embrace the dissolve. How does this tie into Tagaq's novel? I'm just going to keep calling it a novel because a book. We'll say book. Yeah. How does this tie into what we're to the sexuality component or even just anything in the novel? Why would I have showed you this image?
I'm guessing because of the natural part, animals.
Okay, good.
It's another thing I see for sure.
It reimagines something that we've done in the past.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a remix. Yeah, in a way. No, but I'm using it in like the actual sense of the term, not in like the weird, not in the awful like pop way that we make remixes, which is just the same song but with an awful beat in the background.
It's a remake, you see.
Yeah, remake might be a better term.
Yeah.
Yeah, and which is kind of what she does in a lot of cases. In this case, right? A lot of the things that you read here, you kind of recognize, right? Like, how many books have we read of woman gets pregnant and doesn't quite know what to do with that? I've read at least 3 of those novels in the past year and a half. Nothing against those novels. A lot of them are good, right? But it's like it's a convention, right? A trope. And yet, obviously, it doesn't quite end where we would expect, right? As far as that's concerned. Yeah. So there is a kind of remixing that's happening in this text. And I think, right, this is where the sexuality component comes in. Right? What Monkman is playing off of here is how the Renaissance paintings that he's inspired by are aggressively heterosexual. Right? Like, you would never see any kind of homosexuality, for example, in those paintings. Right? Mostly because it just wasn't part of social mores at the time, right? And so it would have, and a lot of the patrons of these paintings would have been very religious and wouldn't have wanted that in their paintings anyway. But he obviously reinserts, right, the fact that a lot of people throughout history have been queer. Right? They've always existed. Shocker. But you see something kind of similar here with Tagaq, right? Where she takes the expectation of what you would talk about in an Indigenous novel, right? I have nothing against it again, but I've read a lot of Indigenous novels that start with the basic concept of there is historical trauma based on residential schools. Right? Like, that is, again, a trope at this point. Okay? And a trope that makes a lot of sense. I'm not here to dunk on tropes. I think tropes are very good, right? When I use it, I don't use it in a derisive way. And you start off with the teacher, right, being a rapist. But then, of course, it doesn't stick with that necessarily. Right, with the rest of the novel. What were our impressions? I guess we'll start there. What were our impressions when we first encountered the consensual sexuality of the book? Sexual relations with foxes,
Unease.
the Northern Lights.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Unease.
Why? Oh.
Which is completely reasonable. Why?
Because it is something that is so like fawned upon, and it isn't something that is often at the center of a narrative.
Yeah, good. So completely unexpected, right? When I first read this, I'd never read about I still haven't, or to be honest, it's not my like type of literature that I'm drawn to as a general rule, but yeah, you don't really read about.
Yeah, I didn't like look anything up before reading it too. So and it starts like in regular story would.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then at some point, it just takes a tangent.
Yep.
And I was like, that was the reaction.
Yes.
Very
Read a
surprised.
few passages to my roommate. I was like, so.
I also read a few passages to my partner.
So
She was like, "Why are you giving this to your students?" I was like, "No, it makes sense. I promise. we'll make it make sense." She's like, "Oh God."
So yeah, no way.
yeah, I was confused because it was at first I was like, what is happening? And then I was just like, why is this a positive thing? I was like, this is not what? I was so unsure.
Okay.
I was just like, oh, okay.
Hold on to that question. I'll ask about your opinions, Marcio, but hold on to that question. Why is this a positive thing? Is, I think, a crucial question to ask. Good. Yeah.
Actually, I got shocked.
In a good way or like an insulting way?
I think it's a bit of both. Because, when you see something that is supposed to be quite a normal thing down there, and I'm quite sure that it still continues going on there. And
Yeah, but we saw it with the missing and murdered.
yeah, that's the thing.
Absolutely.
And I got shocked about that.
Yeah.
And it feels like, according to the book, there was nothing to be done in order to stop that, which was more desperate. And what could be done in order to stop that kind of behavior? And initially, I felt like she was crying for help, was shouting for help, and after that, I felt like, oh, this is the way it should be here, and we will still continue.
Yep. Good. Okay. I'm trying to pull up another image. Let's see if I can find a good one of this. Okay, so no, it's not quite good. Do I show this image? Well, look. When you're might as well. We've read worse in this book. Might as well. In a world where this is acceptable.
Yeah.
I don't know when this picture was taken, but it obviously is from the 21st century at some point.
Yeah.
With a very non-indigenous looking woman wearing like the most offensively indigenous type of clothing, right? For supposedly a model show? Do I want to know? Probably. But
we get the
right, but you get the point, right?
It's bad either way.
Like this ties us back to the sexualization that came with like the colonial violence, right? This representation or image of indigenous women as loose, right, and sexually depraved is one that not only does she explicitly bring up in the text, right? What does she say? Indian slut at some point, right? I don't know if I'm misquoting that, right? But she uses something similar to those terms, right? That kind of language was used in antagonistic fashion, right? Throughout colonial periods, and evidently is still in the public imaginary, right? Since it was something that I was able to find in about 5 seconds on the internet. Although you can find anything in about 5 seconds on the internet, but whatever. So, how does she turn that, or why is this something that she's interested in turning into a positive, to come back to your question, Alicia? Because I agree, I do think at the end of the day it is meant to be positive. Shocking, yes. And also deliberately shocking.
Yeah.
But I guess you can ask both questions and you can answer whichever one you feel like. Why is this meant to be deliberately shocking? And why is it ultimately a positive thing? Right? Pick on whichever question you want in this case, but I think both are worth asking.
I think it's positive because he's shown something that it should be addressed to. It's something that shouldn't be hidden. And negative because it's something shocking, something overwhelming, if you're not prepared enough, ready enough to read that, and that probably you will stop in the middle of the reading.
Yeah, good.
It's interesting that if this is seen as a deliberately shocking thing to happen in the novel, when you put it next to sexual assault, we are still horrified by sexuality with animals and nature more than we're kind of sexual assault has kind of been normalized a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's
when
really
we look
good.
at it, I feel very deeply for victims of sexual assault, and when I started reading that, I do take subjects like this seriously, but we're so used to hearing about it. Even as a woman, I would say that more of my girlfriends have suffered from sexual assault than have not. So it's normalized, while this is kind of shocking and provocative in a sense.
It's more like a sex assault club.
What do you mean?
Because when she mentioned something like more of my girlfriend's friends are,
it happens.
It's just but let's talk about that, anything like this.
But not necessarily, not in that sense, more in it's this thing that happens so often to so many women that in our imagination it's less shocking than sex with animals, while maybe we should be as shocked and as
oh, that's good. It's so normalized that
because it's not even a shock anymore in a way. It's
that's what I mean by most people I know have.
Most
girls I know.
Absolutely.
Especially it's at this point it's oh well,
that's how it goes.
That's how we live at this point. So
I didn't even react when I read that first passage of
That's it.
squirming, but I visibly sucked in air when I read that first
exactly. That's what
Fox
I mean.
section. Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
True.
I was no. Alicia, do you have anything you want to add, or because I have something I want to add, but I want to let you speak if you have anything else.
No, not that comes to mind.
When I was reading this, what came to mind is a kind of warped, and I guess this ties back to Tagaq as a very punk figure, right? To me, I read this as a kind of warped way of giving people what they want, and I'll explain. If we tie this back to the colonial desire to animalize and sexualize women, right? And in the colonial text, you do see explicitly this, right? The use of animalistic language in relation to indigenous women, right? But it was never taken, it was always taken as metaphorical. Yeah. These, ravenous people, for example, right? I read this as a kind of, you want this, right? Is this the kind of image that gives you some kind of interest? Let's take this to its most awful extent, right? Or its most, not necessarily awful because it is positive, but to the most shocking level, right? To put it in less, to again, because I'm incapable of taking anything seriously, to put it in a joke term, it's like when a child says, I want to eat candy for the rest of my life. So you give them cake for a week and then you see how quickly they don't want to eat candy for the rest of their life. Right. But to me, that's kind of how I read it. Right. It's like, okay, so you consistently animalize and sexualize indigenous women. This is what happens, right? When you take it into that domain, right? It makes...
Does that make you comfortable?
Does that make you comfortable?
It's provoking.
But at the same time, by the end, you do get kind of used to it, right? It took me very little time to actually fully engage with that element of the text, right? So that by the end, I did feel it was somewhat liberating insofar as it became an interesting metaphor for sexual freedom, right? I don't think Tagaq is actually arguing that she wants to have sex with a fox, right? Like that's, I don't think, a valid reading.
Maybe she is.
Look, not gonna. Well, in this case, I'm gonna
No, I'm just
ick her young. But yeah, but I see what you mean. Yeah. So that by the end, right, I did kind of take it in the more metaphorical sense of a kind of liberatory sexuality, or a new vision of sexuality that embraces love above everything else, right? Or a kind of love of the planet, love of the self, love of beings around you, human and non-human, that she takes as an expression of sex and uses the image of sex to express that, but that goes way beyond, right, sexuality. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah, that was kind of the image I got, or the perception I had when I was reading through this. It's still not one that I have to admit that I'm fully ready to develop into this coherent thought. I'm still, I think, reeling with this, even though it's the second time that I've read this novel cover to cover. But it is, yeah, that's what's going through my mind when I engage with this sexual component. How does this tie into Planetarity then? Just to kind of try to bring us back to the theme of the class that we started the class with. Does this relate in any way to the planet?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, you can bring it.
Great. Say more. Yeah. There is more to this class than saying yes.
Yes. The end.
Because as I mentioned before, the connection with nature,
yeah,
and that she goes deeper when she is actually open to have sexual intercourse with foxes
and northern lights and all of that.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I think this is a bit of planetary thing. And when she actually goes over the so-called limits, and it's supposed to be planetary, or she's doing something other than expected.
Yeah. How about you, Alicia? You said yes. Say more.
Oh, I saw it as when you said we're basically part of the earth, as we were once animals. So like it goes back to the idea that we're all in a way from the same place. So are we that different, really?
It's a very spiritual way of putting it.
Yeah.
Reevaluates our position.
Good.
Also, like, to go a bit in that sense, there's also this part that talks about time as pressure. No, what
I know, but I don't remember the page specifically, but yeah.
Where it's like, once we decompose, we'll just like change into old blood, which is probably oil that she's talking about. And it's like animals and humans, or non-human animals, will.
I feel like that was like towards the end, but I can't say for certain.
I probably can't say that.
To come back to what you were saying, Alicia, on 118, I'm looking here. The land has no hierarchy. The land has no manners. You only obey and enjoy what is afforded to you by her greatness. So you can almost read, right, these 118, right, what you were saying of kind of seeing humans and non-humans as kind of on the same playing field, right? And metaphorizing that into a willingness to engage in some kind of sexual activity with between human and non-human, I think is a really valid reading. In this case, that's expressed in that passage, right? um, the manners are irrelevant to most people who are not, most things who are not human, right?
Yeah.
Manners are a human construct, right? To use modern parlance. And it's an interesting way of kind of taking that into a planetary perspective, I think, definitely. Did you find the passage
it's
for?
It's on 131 and 132.
131, 132.
There's like the last paragraph.
Yeah.
Like, after death, my body brought is the new board of inanimate objects. Maybe the earth misses all bodies the way a mother misses a newborn. Mm-hmm. And then if you go like lower and you flip to the next page, there's a paragraph that ends, is being inanimate really a lesser state? I thought was interesting.
Yeah. There's a reason why I brought up inanimacy earlier, right? Inanimate objects.
Yeah, I highlighted that.
Yeah. Is being inanimate really a lesser state?
Yeah. It's just a slower state.
Yeah. I think, how do we tie this all together? I guess that is one way of tying it all together, right? Because we often think of, like we said, land, or I gave the example of ice earlier, as inanimate, right? But we often attribute a kind of non-agency to animals as well, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, they don't have the critical capabilities that humans have, therefore they're lesser, right? Because they can't think of new ways of sending missiles to one another, so they suck. Or they can't do math, so they're lesser. But I think this whole book is very much an engagement with this question. Yeah. Is being inanimate a lesser state? And go ahead.
If we go back to like ice and land, it's like this idea that ice has like an inanimate being, or like, is it lesser because it's definitely greater than we are? Like, it's so much more, and like it can be like when you look at the land, and we said the land is long.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Is it lesser? We see it as lesser, but is it?
Yeah, we flatten it out, right? It's long, right? We literally flatten it out, but there's so much, right, happening literally underneath, and above, right, with the northern lights. There's so much in that flatness, all of which is interacting with one another or with us, right, in a way that 100% makes it agential, right, and animate in its own right, right? The term inanimate itself is inadequate. Yeah. Good. We have 5 minutes left to this class, and we didn't even get to the babies.
Oh my God.
Okay, quick reactions to the children.
Horrifying.
Horrifying. Okay.
The shape-shifting.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Shape-shifting.
Oh, Marcio, you missed out.
I don't know if you missed out, but
you absolutely missed out.
Definitely missed something.
The fact that they're like two different beings, but they're only one.
Yeah, so at the end she has children with
the Northern Lights.
Yeah, with the Northern Lights. The Northern Lights impregnate her.
But like, she separates her children in her mind, and she's like, one of them is like bad, and the other is very yin and perfect. She's basically seeing one of them as the Antichrist. She's like,
there's this one evil.
This one takes pain and makes it grow inside of people. And what I was just like, what?
She calls him a little murderer.
Yeah. It shocked me. I was like, oh, the baby is a murderer.
Okay, so why? Always ask yourself, why? I don't think she's doing it necessarily because she hates babies. I don't think that's the appropriate response. It, again, could be shocking, but I don't think that's what she's saying here. So, for me, the way I read that was an embracing of both the chaotic elements of the planet and the beautiful notions that we get out of said planet.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, I've given the example of a volcano before. Yeah. Destructive by its very nature. Yeah, it is literally the core of the Earth coming out and eradicating everything in its path with heat. Yeah. Which is the definition itself of chaos. Yeah. But at the same time, again, you can, to take the really easy example, you can find yourself in front of the ocean and be completely swept away by the peace and calm that it has, right? We live on a planet in which both states exist, right?
And coexist.
Coexist. Good. Kind of like a yin and yang.
It does make sense now that you say it, because when she kills the chaos one, she's like,
the beauty also dies.
Yeah, because she's like, this one is bad, we need to
eradicate it.
But then the other dies because it literally cannot live without the other.
Like, the human mind really tries to separate the two, but they're intertwined.
Yeah, exactly.
And the two babies represent that.
Exactly. Now that I see it, that's better.
Where she gets.
I redeemed the baby part a little bit.
Well, it was very strange, and I was just like, is she having some kind of psychological postmortem? Where you actually think your baby's going to try to kill someone? Because that happens.
Although.
Yeah, because they're connected.
Wow.
Yeah.
She's like, they're deeply connected.
And it's fun that she chose twins.
She always says that they're basically one.
Yes, because twins are like that. Especially as children, they're always together. And like, if one cries, the other cries too. And if one needs reassurance, the other will be there to help. So like, twins are really
empathy for the nation.
Very good choice, actually, the twin thing.
By the way, Alicia, just because you mentioned postmortem, I finished reading a book this week that does address Indigenous postmortem in a really interesting way. If any of you are interested, you won't get extra points for reading it. It's just an interesting book called "And Then She Fell," which is the first novel by an Indigenous woman who's usually a nonfiction writer, called Alicia Elliott. She wrote a very well recognized book called A Mind Spread Out on the Ground, which is still one of my favorite titles that I've read in the last few years. But it's really good, and it actually addresses this Indigenous woman who has a baby and goes through like this weird psychotic, or what you think at first is a kind of psychotic postmortem break, but then goes into a bizarre way that is very different from the bizarre way that this book takes.
At first I thought that's what it was.
Yeah.
Just her being incapable of dealing.
Yeah.
I know we're on time, but I just wanted to fully bring it to the idea of hope.
Oh, yeah.
Why I think it's hopeful. And you can maybe think about that, or if you want to take an extra 2 minutes, whatever. Halfway through the book, I really like this line of, "My womb is impregnated with morning, the past and I conceiving," which 115. That's a little bit past halfway through, and it to me kind of reads as rather dark and not necessarily hopeful, right? Being literally impregnated with morning. But as the novel kind of approaches its end, you kind of see how I think the horror is channeled into a hopeful stream, if you want to put it that way. And this is really well represented with the very last page, where she goes from "protect me, I need help," right? "I'm unraveling, I'm afraid, fear is driving my flesh machine, I'm running blind, adrenaline," kind of spiraling out of control, right, in this last page. "Forgive me, forgive my tardiness, my hatred, forgive my heart, forgive my dark heart, forgive my sickness, forgive my soul," so on, so on, so on. And then there's a shift. "Love me. There is still a child inside the shaking rabbit. Cleanse me. Wash the blood off. I am still working. I survive still. I am stronger now. Worship me. I am boundless. I stood up. I am worthy. Start again. And I think this willingness to not only say it, but actually start again, right, as an act, is one that requires a profound amount of hope. Anyway.
Well, we did end on the hopeful note.
We got there. Was it ham-fisted and perhaps a little bit forced for the sake of time? Yes, but I think we got there in the end.
Sadly, we're not there with the time part yet. We need to follow the clock still.
Damn it.
So
that's your lesson for this week. Burn your clocks.
I only have my phone.
Yeah, burn your phone.
Sadly, class completely changed.